board has raised and the areas that the Conservancy brought back to us.
Excuse me.
Yeah. When we have something more specific, I assure you, we'll come to the community board and we'll share that with you. And Howard knows this, we'll have a pre-meeting, you know, and where you can give your input. We have a pre-meeting with the elected officials and with a member of Community Board 7.
Right. So, it's been a few months, and I know at the meeting we talked about how there are long-term things that need to happen, but also immediate things. Has there been any discussion of like making things happen right away? And we came up with a number of them, like having signs just telling cyclists where they can go. Because there are so many signs telling cyclists where they can't go, and there are some paths, but they're not in any way marked. And those don't take years or even months to create. Those can be done instantly. Is there anything of that, or putting up the your speed signs on the transverses, or getting the police department to really enforce the speed limit? Have any actions been taken, or can they be taken, or is it all just put off for months?
I think we want to come back to the board with a comprehensive plan, and I don't recall if, did the CB send us a resolution, because I didn't see anything.
Absolutely.
When was it sent?
I don't know when it was sent, I know we adopted it.
Okay. Because I don't recall seeing a resolution. Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not looking at, I mean, the transverse roads are single vehicle width in many places. We have buses that carry thousands of people. Surely you're not looking to slow them down.
No. I mean, whatever we do, we're not looking to severely impact other users of the roadway. But again, I don't know if I don't recall seeing the resolution.
Okay, I'm gonna write it down and make
Is
sure
it on the
we
website?
get
It's on the website. It's on the website?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
We have lots of architects, and we have lots of designers living not only in this neighborhood, but in the city as a whole. Have you been speaking to any groups of that ilk as to how they might suggest solving these problems? Or are you just doing it by yourself?
No, that's a great question, because whenever we initiate a project, we do an extensive outreach. So we will be doing outreach for this particular project, just like what we did with Central Park West Bike Lane.
But wouldn't it be done before, I mean, at this point in time, as opposed to when things have been spoken about and settled?
We are gonna do outreach, but again, I don't know what the timeline would be for that, yeah.
So I have the resolution here.
Oh, great. What's the date on the resolution?
The name of it?
No, it's the date.
The date,
yeah.
Well, it's from our meeting. So the meeting was January 14, and then it was ratified at full board, which was early February. But it says, whereas a short-term action is needed to prevent another tragedy like the recent death, therefore we request the following take place as soon as possible. Number 1, clearer signage where wheeled vehicles can go to cross the park. Number 2, stricter enforcement of motor vehicles speeding on the transverses, not limited to, but including the use of your speed signs. Number 3, consideration of other short-term solutions to enhance safety. Number 4, a cross-agency task force with a representative from each agency be set up. And number 5, a task force come back to the Transportation and Parks and Environment Committees no later than March with proposed solutions. So I find it really disappointing that none of these short-term actions have been even considered, and you're saying you need time even to come back with short-term solutions. And I know you're here and no one else is here, so it's unfair to completely focus on you, but
in all honesty, when we implemented the Central Park West Bike Lane, we had to do extensive, outreach, and we had to come together with a proposal to come to the community board. It wasn't something that was just done overnight. I think in terms of the short-term recommendations, we'll have to look at them and see what is practical and what we can do, and we'll get back to the community board on those. Yeah.
So I propose that we
yeah.
do another resolution saying they need to come back by April with short-term measures hopefully in place.
But they're still not using professionals to help them do even the short-term ones. Now you're talking about something that's already in process, and you haven't even spoken to people who might have better ideas.
I don't know if we need a formal resolution.
I don't think you need a
coming
resolution.
back in April to give us an update?
I will discuss it with Borough Commissioner Pinkar and ask him if we will be ready to come back in April. I mean, you're more than welcome to reach out. Yeah, you're more than welcome to reach out to him, Howard, as well. I will definitely discuss it with him tomorrow.
And you're working with Parks Department as well?
Yes, we're working with Parks and we're working with the Conservancy, because these are the three and DOT, the three agencies that are involved in terms of jurisdictions, yes.
And so is there any task force set up, and was there discussion of who might come tonight? And
We don't think we need a task force. I don't believe we need a task force for this. I think the three agencies can handle it on their own. I don't think we need a task force. I mean, based on what we will come and present, and the recommendations we get back, I think we will be able to modify those recommendations, thank you. But I don't think we need a task force.
well, I mean, a joint effort. What I don't know how you
Well, they
define
weren't met.
task
I mean,
force,
We
but
already met,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the idea that none of the others are even here is disappointing as well.
Well,
Yeah,
were they
but-
invited?
Well, I think that there was a snafu about posting things on our website, so I'm not sure, because our Parks Committee colleagues aren't here either.
Yeah.
And I think that had a lot to do with uncertainty about whether meetings were even gonna be held, and waiting for direction from the mayor, so, keep that thought, but I'm not sure that it's completely fair at this point to say that's entirely on the agencies. And I'm encouraged that they at least met, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa?
I
Oh,
did
sorry.
reach out to NYPD, the Central Park Precinct, and they had no idea about this resolution. So I think that's really interesting too.
In that case, transparency is needed.
How do we find out from them what they're doing?
Transparency is needed in that case.
You're the only representative from
I mean, you're more than,
quote, unquote,
you're more than welcome to reach out to the other agencies. I mean, they've been here, they have representative. You're more than welcome to do that, and, you know, I'm kinda surprised that NYPD doesn't know about the resolution. I mean, I'll be honest with you,
There's been a new PD.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a change of command.
There's a change of command? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
The public
what.
affairs person
Yeah,
didn't
Central
know,
Park
community
has
affairs
changed
person didn't know.
He's commanding officers now, commanding officer of the chief board.
Oh, okay.
Mailman is
Yeah.
there.
The board is more than welcome to reach out to the other agencies, yeah.
And you'll be here in April to tell us what's going on.
I'll have something maybe before April.
Great.
Yeah, I'll definitely share this with, Ed, and we'll get back to you, yeah, tomorrow.
Oh, I just wanna finish this topic,
Yeah.
but go ahead.
Are you aware of a little diatribe that goes, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole?
I don't know, is that your analogy of something?
I don't know if the issue is.
Yeah.
Totally unrelated topic. There was a loading zone pilot on West End Avenue. I just was wondering if you had any update on that. I was curious.
Loading zone, no, I don't have an update on that, but I'll get back to you on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
in October of 2018, we passed a resolution, calling for a loading zone pilot at West End Avenue, which I assume that's.
I do remember that, yes.
And a loading zone pilot on Central Park West, which hasn't happened yet.
Mhm.
The Central Park West is just, it's the whole street is now a loading zone. Is there any plan to assess the pilot on West End Avenue? I think for April, it would be good to hear what that pilot is, to learn about it, and if there's any assessment of it yet.
Sure.
And two, to hear if there's any plan.
To do Central Park.
To do Central Park, because those are massive buildings that get tons of deliveries.
Yeah.
And I live there, it's always obstructed. I have not seen, the Central Park West in the lane in front of my building during the
With
day
that
ever
double
free.
parking. Yeah, okay, I'll get back to you on that one.
Barbara?
What did the pilot entail?
It would just be an update as whether it's successful or not,
No,
what we've
but I mean,
noticed.
what was involved in this particular?
Putting in
resolution?
loading
It's
zones.
putting in loading
They're
zones
there, on
at
West End Avenue.
specific areas.
I mean, how many per block in front of every building or what?
Well, no, it wasn't in front of every building. I think West End, we, chose some specific locations where we implemented the loading zones. And Central Park, we didn't do anything. We didn't
Well,
get a chance to
we
do
had the
that
Central
yet.
Park West bike
Yeah,
lane, which
but
was
yeah,
a big change,
yeah.
so I think we just sort of said, let's let it slide,
Let's
but
hold
that's
off on that,
been
yeah.
in for well over a year now, so it's time to
Sure.
really look at Central Park West. Rich?
I just want to get back to Central Park, and I know it's unfair because you're the one who's here, unlike the others. But I think the core of our discussion was we know that it takes time to do permanent solutions, and what's needed here is urgent, and it's the short-term measures that could take place really quickly. And it's really disappointing that it sounds like those haven't been. So yeah, if the other agencies could, get heads together and figure out what short-term solutions there might be. And we proposed, we came up with a few, but we're not the experts, so.
Yeah, and I will definitely pass your resolution along to the Conservancy and Parks, because I don't know if they
Why don't we
received
do
it.
that
Yeah.
tomorrow? Why don't we, just get it out? I assume it went out already, but belts and suspenders, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know when the rest of the Central Park West pipeline will be?
That's a great question. It's gonna be implemented in early spring. It's on our priority list. Howard had asked me about that last month, so it'll be.
It feels like early spring now.
I know. Don't be fooled by the weather.
Nice weather, definitely.
I know. That's definitely in our priority, and we're
Great.
gonna finish it this,
Thanks,
yeah,
Colleen.
yeah. All right.
Any other questions for Colleen?
Thank you.
Okay,
You're
thank you,
welcome.
Colleen.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming, Colleen.
The next topic we have is discussion of information required in connection with the request for curbside building access. We have discussed this a lot, and there doesn't seem to be a consensus on what types of things we would grant this request in connection with and what we wouldn't grant it in connection with. So we've decided to come up with a mere list of information that we require anyone who's seeking this curbside access should provide. So I have my notes from last time. One was the size of the building. Two was the question of whether there is a block association, and if so, has it weighed in on this request? Three was whether there was a hydrant within X number of feet of the entrance, and I think hydrant is too limiting a word. It should be anything that allows curbside access within an X number of feet, 10 feet, whatever the number we want to choose is. Which is much less important now, because these are not standards for granting the request, they're just requests for information. So the request would be, what is the nearest curbside access? And it could be due to a fire hydrant or something like that. Any information about unique traffic condition, and that's what I have. Any other things that people have, Mark?
So, if I understand what you're doing correctly, it's a lot like what BCI does for sidewalk cafes, and a lot what preservation does for rooftop additions.
And a lot what we do for secondary street names.
Right, you have a list of information that you want, and what typically happens in BCI and preservation is that there's some flyering of the block in advance of the meeting, and the applicant is required to show you proof that the signs were posted. What most applicants do is they actually take, cell phone pictures of the flyer in place, because they have a funny way of disappearing sometimes. So that might be a useful thing to include in the, getting on the agenda.
Excellent idea, I'll add that to the list. Lisa?
I had a whole list of them, I don't know if it's helpful, but demonstrated safety concerns, like problems with visual obstructions, repetitive double parking, obstructing a bike lane, demonstrated need, frequent accessorize, drop-offs and pickups, wheelchair-bound or walker-dependent tenants, doctor's office with frequent wheelchair access needs, any information on the specifics of your building, whether there are loading zones nearby, parking regulations in front of your building, any ramps near your building, demonstrated support either through your block association, your actual building, your co-op board, your condo board, tenants association. I just think bring information and telling people as much what they can bring so that you can make an educated decision.
I think that's very helpful. Again, my generic was unique traffic conditions, but to give people examples of the kind of things that the committee and the full board would find persuasive would be helpful. Could you email that to me?
Yeah, I will right now.
I think that's very helpful.
I think it's very helpful.
The other problem is if you have a curbside drop-off and you're either in a walker or wheelchair or you have a baby carriage, you're not gonna be able to get up on the curb, so you may wanna request a
curb cut?
A curb cut.
That's a heavy lift.
Well, that's a problem, because,
And there's a significant cost to that as well.
Easier to get off at the corner where there's a curb cut.
Okay, right.
It depends on the person. Again, this is not supposed to solve all problems. It's supposed to just, the
But it's
perfect should
something
not be
that
the end of the
that
day.
may come up, so we.
Right.
Nobody's ever come to us requesting.
No, yeah.
Well, NYCHA had a request that didn't come here for a curb cut outside of Main Street.
I guess they could request that in addition. I don't know if we should put that as an additional offer. But I think that's something totally separate.
I'm just bringing it up because it's something that will come up.
If it comes up, we could address it
Yeah.
when it comes up. But hopefully it will come up very often. Barbara?
I have a question and something to say after. First of all, how would you use such a list that you develop?
We'd have to discuss it because we were not able to come up with specific standards.
Would this be something that you would put on the website, or would this be something that would be, when someone called the community board office and said, I would like to be on the agenda because I would like
yeah.
this, somebody would send
Whatever we
them-
do for the secondary street renaming list, we do for this. I just see it as identical.
Well, some people see this as controversial. This can be controversial because it is, if this becomes the kind of thing where people can easily get a loading zone in front of their building, I mean, this is a meeting tonight that was not noticed. So there's a lot of people here from Transportation Alternatives, but there's nobody here from the community at large.
No,
This is not to grant, that's the whole point. We decided not to do that. That's not what we're doing. We are not coming up with a list of items that you need to fulfill to get a spot. We're just coming up with a list of information. It's just information. We don't even need a resolution for this. This is just what we want to hear from people. This is just what we want to know.
But if I may interject, but I feel like Barbara's concern is why are we creating a list for something that the topic at hand is the topic of controversy, right? So the idea of, I think, taking a public parking space and then converting it for private use essentially is, I think, the area of concern that some members have. And if you're creating a list, of parameters saying this, if we were to do this, this would be a qualification for it.
No, that's exactly not what we're doing.
Exactly
That's 100% opposite of what we're doing.
But
what
it
we're doing is
sounds
saying,
that way.
we have people come to us like Andrew, and they say we want to have safety in front of our building. It's not privatizing space. Actually, it's making it public, because when one car sits there, it's privatized for one person. When it's open, it's available to older people, infirm people, people with mobility issues. So I wouldn't call that privatizing. But the point is that that's exactly not what we're doing. What we're doing is these people come to us, we're telling them, don't come to us unless you can provide us this information. If anything, it cuts the other way. We're telling them, we're not interested unless you can provide this information. And so if you have additional information to put on the list, we usually came up with quite a list, you should definitely add it. But we want some kind of standards, otherwise we're just bombarded. It's an attempt to regulate this whole process.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I like Lisa's list very much, and I think that more information the better. At BCI, some applicants come very prepared and some don't. And the ones that come very prepared, we are able to make an informed decision. So,
That's
for
exactly the
example,
point.
great floor plans, sometimes photographs, right? And that's really helpful, and sometimes things go up on a projector. So I love the idea of somebody coming prepared. Here's the building. It's not necessarily required to have photographs, but if you do, that's great. If you have a floor plan, great. And these are suggested. The other thing I would say is you want to manage people's expectations. So perhaps a disclaimer that says that it remains the discretion of the community board as to whether or not it's going to be granted. It's not it is what it is, and here's all the stuff to be helpful.
Secondary street meeting. It's important that they understand that, and that's clearly the case. But I would just replicate the process we use for secondary street meetings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we have just saying, like, if somebody applies for a liquor license or an outdoor cafe permit, it's not necessarily an as of right? It's discretionary based on the community and the board's
These people are
opinion. So that's all.
applying. We want more information, not less. Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like for months this whole conversation's been caught up in semantics. And as you said, Howard, creating these criteria is exactly the opposite of a checklist of if you meet all these criteria.
It's not criteria, it's just
Well,
information.
you use the word standards, which I think is wrong because that makes it sound like, and again it's semantics, but it makes it sound like, you just said it before. Just hear me out. It makes it sound like if you can check all these boxes, you automatically get it, and that's exactly the opposite.
But it's exactly not what we're doing.
Well, hear me out. So, we know that these things are going to keep coming at us,
Yeah, and
And
so
we
we're
need
trying to
some
regulate the
evaluation criteria to decide.
We can't come up with it. We can't agree on it. We've tried, and
Howard,
we're not
Howard,
doing
we're
it again
saying the
today.
same thing, you keep interrupting.
But Howard,
Yeah.
I don't understand how you can regulate the process. Are you saying that you have to have somebody with a disability, you have to have somebody who has.
No, we're saying we have to tell us
Change
if
it.
they have it. We need information. This is a request for information. I don't understand why asking for information is at all controversial.
You still take it on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then, my major issue is, I don't care what kind of a form people fill out with information, as long as that form is not made public, and they have to call the community board office and say, my building has need and we'd like a loading.
Why shouldn't it be public?
I mean,
We're here to serve the public, and if we want certain information before we provide certain benefits, why are we gonna keep the information we want to learn about private? Lisa?
I think you're just trying to come up with a checklist for people like Andy or other people who want this, but have no idea what information you really
Right.
want. So this is just helpful to you guys to have as much information as possible so you can make a decision.
It's going to facilitate our discussions, because otherwise they're coming to us and we'll just sit here flailing our arms. We want Barbara, you're gonna want information. When they say they want a spot, you're gonna say, tell me the story. So this is just supposed to make this whole process more efficient. Yep.
Two points. First of all, every time we get into these discussions about this particular kind of a topic, everything is predicated on the police will enforce it. The police will enforce it. And we have learned that that's not true. And yet we still use that as a rationale for why we should do this, that, or the other thing. Direct, which is on 76th Street, just off of Broadway. They just had a no parking sign put up right in the middle of the block. I don't think this board had anything to do with that.
It doesn't ring a bell with me.
Right, exactly. It becomes almost political.
Well,
Not
the
even
DOT
almost.
has the ability, independent of the community board, to do what they need to do to keep the streets safe. That's.
Well, that has nothing to do with
that's their
keeping the
highest
street
and
safe.
most important
This
mission.
had absolutely nothing to do with keeping the street safe.
I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
Where was that?
76.
I just wanna get back to saying, are you saying that like a BCI where they have to, I don't know, maybe there's 5 core questions that have to be filled out, if they fill out 3,
Yeah, don't come
will
to
you
us
say,
unless you tell us
please
this.
fill
That's
out
what
these
all
other
we're
2?
saying.
Cause that was a lot of information and it sounded
Yeah.
like good information, I just think that you may wanna center and
Well, a lot
say,
of
these
it
are
is
the
gonna
5
be NA,
essential
not
things and
applicable.
these would be preferred, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would say is, you know, you kind of said we've been going over this, and the truth of the matter is that everyone's a really good person in this room, but people feel differently about it, and it's just a sensitive topic, and that's just the gorilla in the room, and everyone's doing what they think is right, and people that I respect a tremendous amount in this room, I just strongly disagree with, so it's just like a sensitive topic, and let's all just acknowledge that, it's a sensitive topic, so when people are a little sensitive to, I do think that there'll be some people that will feel, why didn't you give notice? I don't think you did it on purpose. I'm just pointing out that it's a sensitive topic, and we as a board should just be sensitive to
Steve,
that.
if they
That's
have
all I'm saying.
additional-
And I think I said that very nicely. I didn't point it at anybody. That's all I'm saying.
It's just a list that
People
we're gonna
disagree
require.
to agree. I mean, I have no
But I just
problem with
wanna
it.
add something, and that if you come up a month or 2 later with something that we overlooked.
Howard, I have no
I'll
problem
add
with it, I'm just
Okay.
saying, and I'm just pointing out that everyone's sensitive to this topic, so that's why everyone's a little on edge.
But the difference is it's never a one-on-one conversation, it's a group.
And I think what's gonna happen is, you're,
So if you and I want to discuss
if someone
this,
comes up and they say, we would like
in public,
I'm making in the street, we would like in front of, X. We're gonna post notices before we make a decision.
Absolutely, we're gonna vet the information.
So there's gonna be a big
Yeah.
discussion, and people that have a good objection are gonna be able to come and say.
And they're going to have something to base their objection on, because they're gonna have all this
They're
information.
gonna say, but, you know, the curb cut is 20 feet away.
Well, we're not talking about curb cuts.
But no, but it may be that the
Oh,
corner
right.
has a
Curb
better,
access.
Right, right.
you know, and then it might be a better spot.
I just think that if we keep it a little bit more generalized, but give examples, and we use words like the applicants are encouraged to, or you could say advised to, bring the following but not limited to,
Well, I
these
think there are
things, and
certain
give
things we wanna
examples.
know, like the size of the building, whether the block association has weighed in.
Okay.
What is these are things that
If there is one.
maybe personally, I think you are essential to know. Is there already curbside access? Because my building in particular has a fire hydrant right in front, so there's curbside access. That's something worth knowing. So there are certain things, and then the whole list that Lisa came up with could be added is, we're also interested in unique conditions like, and then we could run through the list.
Right.
But you're gonna have language that says, notwithstanding getting this information.
You may not get.
Yes, the decision
Oh,
will be-
absolutely.
yes,
This is
have
to
that language like
enable
that.
us to debate whether it should be granted or not, yes.
I just want to ask Steve, and it's a point I made, whether it's last meeting or one of the meetings. To me, it's two different issues. One is, what are the evaluation criteria? And the second is, given those evaluation criteria, what is your threshold? And I feel like, you know, each of us has a different threshold for what we might approve. Some people feel like if anyone comes, no matter what, they should get approved. Others feel like they never ever should be approved, and that's fine. And that's why we have different minds on the board. But what I feel has happened is, in the past few months when these have come up, we've had it sent back to the committee saying we can't even evaluate this. We can't apply our threshold until we have evaluation criteria. And so what we're talking about now, and what Lisa came up with a number of, and other people have mentioned, is different evaluation criteria that could be considered. Does that sound right? Like, there are these two factors. One is how we're evaluating them.
I don't think that's right. I mean,
I don't think
that's
it's-
a
that's not right to
conversation
me.
we can have, but I don't think that's what Howard's saying.
Yeah, everyone has
I
their
don't think
own
this- I
personal
think
opinion,
you have-
and it's going to
I'm
give you
just
the
saying,
information. Yep.
You sort of park that for a while, because we can't agree, and you just wanna say, in order to be considered, we need the minimum standard, like if somebody does a liquor license or something.
Exactly.
That's what I thought.
We don't know if we're
And
gonna
I'm
be-
just saying, I'm
I
okay with that.
100%
If
agree with you.
say, these are the 5 required, here are the ones that suggested.
Don't
and
come to
that's
us
okay
without
with
this
me, but
information because
I'd be
we
happy to have
can't-
another conversation, but I think that's what you think.
Yeah.
I think you guys are not on the same page.
Yeah.
But if we get all this information and then each of us applies our personal threshold of whether or not to approve it, does that sound like the right process to you? Because I feel like in the past you've said,
That's what
you
happens
know,
with anything.
That's what happens with everything.
yeah, except that in the past, we've applied our thresholds, it's gone to full board, and Steve, you've been among the most vocal in saying, we shouldn't consider this, we shouldn't apply our own thresholds, we need,
But we've
an
given up on
evaluation
that.
criteria.
We gave up on that a couple months ago. We can't do it.
But are we
There's
gonna
no
get stuck in that
agreement.
same cycle where we're gonna get new
No,
ones,
we're
we're
not,
gonna
because
vote on
it's going to
them?
be like every other thing that comes before the board. We're going to get as much information as possible, which is what this thing does, and then all of us will apply our own reasoned judgment to it.
But then it's a
like any other
question-
thing.
Are you comfortable with that,
Then
Steve?
we're having a tour.
Or-
I think it's not for me to be comfortable.
Right, that's how the community board works.
It's not for me to
And
be
inspecting
comfortable.
the proposed sites is a good idea too.
I feel like we're,
That's a good idea.
Really
The-
is.
my apologies.
No, please.
No, go ahead.
I mean, there's basically there's a couple of things here. I'll try to dissect this as easily as possible. That, I agree with you with getting a list of information makes absolute sense,
Mhm.
which is great. And I understand the analogy with BCI and liquor license, I think that's great too. The challenge is, I think, is that it's harder to put the same, something that's so, the standard of a liquor license I don't think is really applicable, or at least the analogy,
No.
to something like this. It's not, it's difficult, because when I heard some of the ideas, like a building with more than 40+ unit, things of that nature, you need to have a committee, these are just still ideas floating in the air, which I completely understand. I thought of friends of mine who live in housing projects, would they qualify for something like this, you know? Is that something they can have access to? Because there's plenty of people there who would have a need, right? So, and then so I think a lot of us have that fear, and I think I have that fear, that if we have a standardization, then everybody will come in willy-nilly with an application saying, listen, let's just do this. And if we have a standard that says you check mark, you complete all the check boxes 1 through 10, therefore we don't have any reasonableness to just say no. You know, like if they come with everything, then the answer will always be yes. And then
Did you hear Lisa's list? There's literally no spot in the world that meets all of that criteria.
Right.
On the planet Earth,
Right, I mean,
guarantee you.
we're still, it's all these ideas.
Plus, as Howard said, language will be installed that
Right,
says.
this is really clearly, yes,
Yeah.
so.
Nevertheless, each location will be judged on its own merits. You know, words to that effect.
I'm sorry
Barbara.
to ask this question again, but I don't, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think that things like this, if you want to apply for a space in front of your building, here are the criteria and we ask you to fill out in advance.
Here's the information we want from you.
We don't have any forms like that, we don't have it for BCI.
We do have it for, in this, for secondary street renaming.
Yes, we do.
The idea is to create
I just
one.
looked at the website, I didn't see it, I may be.
Well, then it should be up there.
I don't think it's up
Do you know
there.
what's-
I
Well,
don't
we
think
should
there's
get it.
It's up there.
forms like
The
that.
street naming.
Whether it's on the
It's
website,
Any
whenever you
of
make
it.
the application, Jesse
Yeah, we do.
sends that to the applicant.
When somebody calls the office and says, I wanna do this, they say,
Correct.
we'll email you the proper form, right?
Correct.
Yes.
And that's how I'd like
Yeah,
to
we should have
see
the
it.
most robust website.
does that?
Yep, oh.
I happen to be on the website now because I'm trying to arrange minutes, and the secondary street naming guidelines are on our website.
Oh, I thought
Where
that
are
was
they?
Under the About section, right beneath bylaws, it says secondary street naming
Oh,
guidelines.
really? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Of course.
So, you're not the only community board that's grappling with this issue. Community Board 5 has also been getting a lot of these requests for the no parking regulation in front of residential buildings. And they do have like a set of criteria that they look at, because obviously they don't want to like give this to every building that comes to them to request it. If I may suggest, maybe you might wanna reach out to them and ask them what
Oh,
their
I've seen what they,
approach is.
what they've requested, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep,
Just
but
different-
again, this board will not go for that, giving presumptive approval if you meet these standards. We've discussed it, it's not,
You're not gonna find
it's
it
not
on the
happening.
You
Yep.
need
I
to
just
do
wanna,
it.
to
You need to
piggyback
do it.
on what that gentleman
You're not
said.
gonna
So
find
for
it on the
example,
phone.
tonight,
Oh, really?
this gentleman,
It's a
we
different-
spoke briefly,
Oh,
he said
really?
he's looking for one parking spot, for he has 80 apartments. I've got 600 apartments. Does that mean I get a whole block?
No, we're talking about.
Well, why not?
Why not? Because I don't think you
Well,
should.
not-
This is
Well,
not just-
okay, but now,
Take a whole lot.
let's say that my building goes to Gail Brewer or to Helen Rosenthal and says, listen, we have 1,200 voters here. Don't you think that's gonna weigh into a decision that you
Well,
make?
Gail Brewer and Hal Roswell have higher jobs than I do, so they get.
Well,
they-
of course,
they-
but that's the problem.
Right, supersede anything
But
we
that's,
do here.
but that's the
Not-
problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, there's nothing we could do here.
I agree,
To
other
limit
than-
Gail Brewer or Hal
other than
Rosenthal's
to
authority.
understand that that happens.
That's beyond our authority.
Again.
There's so many things beyond our authority, those are the most
Right,
obvious ones.
but those are the ones, those are the critical ones, because that
But we
shows.
can- Again.
It's more of a
Anything else?
philosophical.
So, do we need a resolution for
I-
this?
I'm just gonna say this again, I just think we should keep it simple. This
No,
is,
it's the whole point.
these are just, these are, I don't know if you're gonna say that there's a minimum standard, or, I would like, I think we should stay away from a checklist, and the words checklist or anything to that effect. It should just be, these
The
are,
information
you are
you need to
encouraged
provide.
and advised to submit the following and not limited to.
Well, not
And these are
encouraged, it's actually
examples.
required.
Okay, so.
Okay, I'll just tell you, so
Okay.
there's no controversy. This is the information you must provide to us in connection with any request for blah, 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 that's how it should be worded.
Okay, but because every situation is perhaps is somewhat unique, I mean, I'd like, it may not be limited to the following, but it just.
No, I'm not limiting it, I'm just
Right,
saying,
right,
provide,
okay.
and then any other, there'll be a catch-all, any other information you think is relevant, we wanna hear about.
Right, now, to Mark's point and about posting, are we now?
We have one meeting. People, if you wanna talk, go outside.
Are we going to implement the posting like we do with preservation and BCI? Is that what we're saying?
Seems like we should, yeah.
Okay, that seems a very fair process to me.
Yep.
I do think we need to be clear both to applicants and to full board that we are evaluating each one on a case-by-case basis.
That's what we do for every resolution.
That's what we
But-
said.
but
We
we-
said that 3 times,
just-
that that's what
But it
we're
goes over
doing.
people's
No, but I mean,
We've
saying
just
it
gotten
in
caught in this
in
loop
We
that
said that.
anytime.
Howard
talked
said
about
that
that
3
language.
times, and it was gonna go into the,
Yes, right, we're definitely putting that in.
Nevertheless, each
which everybody
request
would
will be
listen.
judged on its own merits.
All right,
Bingo.
this is
That'll
very
go on the
benign.
bottom in bold, in caps.
And I
all
think
caps.
it should also say, even if said criteria is fulfilled.
This is not
Just don't use the word criteria.
Yeah.
Don't use
Well,
the
or
word
not
criteria.
criteria, even
Don't
if
use the
said-
word criteria, because that bespeaks an assumption of approval, so when there isn't one.
Different,
then
different.
It's
that's
just
the
simply
point of
going
agreement
to
we've
say,
got.
this is the
Yeah.
information you
People
must
listen.
provide to us in connection with any request. Once we receive the information, we will judge each request on its merits.
Could you share the list with us before you?
It goes on the website, yes,
Yes.
we'll circulate. If you have any comments, we're all ears.
I'm so sorry, just for clarity, so there's a lot of information that can be provided by any applicant, and some of them are different. So it could be videos, there could be floor plans, photographs, could be letters, signatures, you name it. But now what we're talking about is the minimum things that that applicant needs
Yes.
to send
Yes.
to even be heard.
Yes.
And
we're not
what is
anywhere.
that list, and how many items are on that
Well,
list?
I thought we went through it. It's the size of the building that they're in,
Right.
whether there is a block association, if so, if they've weighed in on this,
Right.
the situation regarding present access to the curb, and then a laundry list of all the other kind of things. But I think those are the things everyone who comes before us should provide us at least with that.
Okay.
Yep.
So we
And
just need to
stories,
make
the
a,
number of apartments.
Well, I said the number of apartments. By size, I meant, yes, numbers of apartments. Yep.
we need to make a clear and convincing case to full board that we're not gonna have what they've been sending all these back to us with of clear standards, for approving them.
I made it clear, we don't have it. So they're
Yeah,
gonna have
but
to
we
hear
have,
each
we have
of
to
these
make sure that
applications.
we're voting at full board on each one, and it doesn't get caught in this loop that we've been caught in, where we approve it in committee, it goes to full board, and full board says, no, we're not gonna even consider these until you have criteria.
We don't.
Okay.
We need to make that clear.
I've made it clear. I've said it like at least twice at full board.
Just one more point. We have in our neighborhood a lot of driveways that used to be attached to the house, which is a garage. That garage is no longer.
Yes, you're all over.
Okay,
Places like
yeah.
that.
like where?
Well, I could, 74th Street between West End and Riverside, 75th Street between West End
Oh,
and
there.
Riverside,
Okay.
76th Street between.
Okay.
Not only that, look at the Ansonia Hotel, which has a driveway that no car can fit into, and yet no one can park there either. I think that if you're talking about well, for example, if the gentleman wants one space, why not take the space that's being presently occupied by a cutout that is no longer necessary because there's no garage?
Because it may be a mile away.
No, there's just no.
If it's nearby, that's a clear example of something we take into account. If there's an existing curb cut that's not utilized within 30 feet, yes, that's a very relevant fact.
Right, but there are, and I mean.
Well, not, as I said, I'm not familiar with them where I live, so.
Come visit.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry to just going back to the post, there's just a technicality, I just wanted to get clarification. So since we have a little parity on BCI, with BCI, there's an application process, goes to the office, then we set an agenda, the applicant has to post. When they come to us, each one of the members on our BCI committee is usually tasked with seeing if they were posted, right? And a applicant comes with photographs sometimes to show that they were posted. So are we, I mean, I'm not trying to add
that
more
was
work,
also, I didn't read
but
that because I scribbled it. It's posting and proof of posting.
yeah, fine, I mean, that's fine,
Yep.
fine for me.
That's actually a good segue to, just, don't give me that, Howard. If you're gonna roll your eyes at me, I'm just gonna quit the board.
Guys, it's a tough night, let's just hang together.
We're making
okay?
progress, come on.
We have a real problem with this committee that we don't have agendas prepared in advance. They're often not posted. This meeting isn't a legal meeting because we didn't have an agenda posted until today.
Right.
The agencies that were supposed to report back to us didn't even know that they were supposed to report back to us. They say that they didn't get resolutions. I'm just wondering what the process is. A lot of people are giving up a lot of time to be here, and for us to just be spinning wheels when we're not able to actually get stuff done is a waste of everyone's time and a waste of the only 11 meetings we get a year here to try to save lives. And I'm wondering what we should be doing to make sure that we have an agenda in advance, that it's a prepared agenda that's taking into consideration the most important things in our district, that we're publicizing this agenda, we're letting people know about it, we're letting people know about resolutions we pass. But who's responsible and what needs to happen to make sure this is happening?
I'm responsible because chair of the board, it all comes here. So I admit that this isn't our best month. There have been some unique challenges this month, some of which I'll be happy to talk about and some of which I won't. But there have been some unique challenges this month that got in our way. I in turn will be speaking at steering about every committee, not just this committee, every committee, needing to get its agendas together and to get them together more than a fortnight, an overnight before the meetings. We have some committee chairs in the room who've been doing a very good job of that, and perhaps we should focus on that as well. So putting aside the unique situation here, we are doing better on that as we've been going along, and we will continue to make progress on that. That's important. We have some real talent helping us get the word out. I've seen our committee agendas on the LinkedIn kiosk, for example, and that never happened before, and that's no credit to anybody but the guys who've taken this on, so thank you. We will do better on that, you're right. The word legal or illegal meeting, let's put a pin in that. But I will get more active on that with all of our committees. It is especially an issue with committees, you know, there's sort of a bucket of committees whose agendas are application driven, and those agendas are what they are. And then there are those that kind of make up their own agendas, and then there's parks, which is a little bit of both. So we have made some progress. You're right that we can make more, and I hear you.
Just to add to that, Mark, BCI is tomorrow night, and that was posted at around between 2 and 3 today, and we have many applications and people where it's really, the community depends on seeing those things, because we have people who sometimes fill the audience every single month to speak either for or against someplace, so. Understood.
There was an expectation that all meetings like this were going to be advised to be canceled, and then that didn't happen. So we were kind of waiting for an anvil to drop on the Roadrunner, but it didn't happen.
Okay, I see.
So we're going forward, and we didn't want to create an expectation that we then had to move it to sort of walk back.
This committee had, or the board has a 3-star rating out of 5. I mean, don't you think that one of the
From David.
Right, is it one
Who's rating community boards?
I'm just saying, you have a 3-star rating,
From?
and it would seem to me, given
From
the
whom?
talent that we have in this area, that we shouldn't have a 3-star rating, we should have a 5-star rating. And what does it take to get to that 5-star rating?
Well, I have no idea who's rating us, so I can't answer that.
Say again?
I don't know who's rating us, so, and I don't really care.
Plus
I've
he's the borough
already
president,
acknowledged
maybe.
that we could do better, and we will do better, so let's work on that
And my
instead of.
suspicion is if I went online and gave it a 5-star rating, we'd then have a 4-star rating. So we'll leave it at that.
I just wanna note that according to, some of the community boards thought it was fall forward and straight back.
Okay, moving along.
It's actually the radon that's interfering with the hands on the clock.
One thing you may want is
Steve?
whoever's applying their association to the building, you know, whether they're.
Oh, whether they live there, yes. I just assumed it would be a resident.
Well,
but it
you
could
may
be
wanna
anything,
just say,
right.
what is your formal
Okay,
attachment to the building?
size and affiliation.
Right, because
Yeah,
you
it
don't want a
could
situation
be-
where somebody's putting one in front of your building instead of
Well,
mine.
I'll take it, don't get me wrong.
Me
But I
too,
just
actually.
think you wanna know if it's the
Yep.
building manager, if it's, I lived there for 20 years, it's probably a good piece of information.
And then, again, I can't emphasize more, this list is not gonna be complete. Look at it, if you have additions, we're happy to add stuff. Rich?
Just a moment of clarity. I looked on Google.com and we do have a 3-star rating. Someone named Howard Freeman 3 years ago gave us a 5 stars, saying the Upper West Side's unfortunately best kept secret, and he goes on. Someone named Ira Gershenhorn gave us 1 star. His comment was, I've suggested changing the name from New York City Community Board 7 to Manhattan Community Board 7 because other New York City boroughs have identically numbered community boards. And the New York City implies that this is the only CB7, and it is not. It is Manhattan CB7.
That's why we got 1 star?
Yeah, and for that reason.
It's not a bad
Okay.
And just the final point here is the name now is Manhattan Community Board 7. So
It always has been.
It always has been,
Yes.
exactly.
Unfortunately, the community boards are sequentially numbered by borough, so there is a community board 7 in 4 out of the 5 boroughs.
Brooklyn, sure.
And the reason I know this is that there was actual physical violence at Community Board 7 Queens's land use meeting last month, and I was
Oh my
given
God.
a little bit of a talking to about it until we figured out that it wasn't us.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but they got a 5-star rating.
That's right.
So, let's keep it moving. Any other, I think we're pretty much done with the agenda.
Manhattan Mixed Martial Arts Community.
Is there new business? Ken, you had something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can go ahead.
Okay.
All right.
As you probably heard, with the coronavirus,
You've heard about it.
Pandemic, the mayor has, advised New Yorkers, to not take the crowded trains and not drive, but to bike and walk as much as possible. And yet, in a way, he's sort of, advising New Yorkers, given the state of our, quote-unquote bike network, to substitute one epidemic for another. Because we don't have anything close to a true network of protected bicycle lanes. So I think we should call on the city given this health crisis and given the fact that 29 cyclists died last year, which is more than in the last more than 20 years, that we call on the city to create a safe network of bike lanes with the emphasis on network, and also expand city bike everywhere.
So agreed, but I think we also need short-term solutions because of the mayor's specific call to use bikes now. And one specific one would be to call on the city to help City Bike fund rebalancing, because there are many more people riding to work. So it's even harder to find bikes on the Upper West Side, and it's even harder to find docks downtown. And that's something that in normal times City Bike should be funding on their own. I don't think it's unreasonable though, if the mayor is calling for more people to ride bikes, that special funding goes to funding these efforts.
Andrew.
So we're talking about a mayor that has used every excuse he can possibly come up with to not fund Governor Cuomo's MTA because they don't like each other. He had to be pulled kicking and screaming by the state legislature into paying the city's half of the subway action plan, which is fixing all kinds of stations, making them accessible, new signals and everything. So I know what the MTA is doing to keep surfaces clean and address the coronavirus scare. I'm happy to say every time I ride there's plenty of people. I think if you take precautions, I think you'll be fine. I'm hopeful this is a temporary situation, as everybody is hoping, I'm sure, around the world. It has abated in China, apparently, where it started, so there's hope that it will abate everywhere else. If we're gonna call on the mayor to do things, I think helping to fund the essential thing that moves 90% of his constituents around the city would be the #1 thing we should be doing.
Just to kind of add on Ken's point, I would say, more importantly, there should be information on best practices of riding a bike in New York City. I mean, I think lots of us who like I biked over here, a lot of us who love the bike path, we've learned it. Just earlier today, there was a young kid who was taking the bike, and he city bike, I have a city bike membership, and I told him, best way to get to 14th Street is actually taking the West Side Highway. I mean, don't even bother going to Columbus, it's not even worth it. All the red lights.
You mean the bike path?
Bike path, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Don't get on
bike path,
not 9A.
On Riverside. Oh, fine. But and someone like my girlfriend who's had a bike, she's from Chicago, she biked in safe areas. She's still not even comfortable going on a protected bike lane, but I have to constantly teach her all the tips and tricks on how to be safe and how to slow down and keep an eye on your shoulder. I really think if the city can create something like that, where there's a go-to of teaching and educating bikers on how to be safe, we can create a culture of safety, and people just hopefully create a culture of safety, people looking out for each other, I think. Or we could just create a YouTube video like tomorrow, we could do it online.
I bet there's already one on that.
I can't imagine there is.
Reed.
Yes, I would like the police to effectively use big data to determine what kind of enforcement will gain the most life savings for cyclists and pedestrians. What I hear when they come here is they say, well, we give the same number of tickets to the
It's
percentage
proportional.
breakdown.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for effective policing, enforcing laws so that people won't be killed. However, whatever that means, but I want the police to use big data to determine what that should be.
I just want to say one quick thing. Ken Ebb raised a very specific resolution, and now this is going all over the place. He's calling this an emergency situation. I think everyone in this room is very familiar with it, and to do something in the next very short term, something that may need several days, let's say, to try to mitigate the problem. That's
Right.
did I characterize your resolution correctly?
It is possible, they did it under Mayor Koch, to deploy a protected bike lane in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
You just
You
put
put up
in
those
a
plastic
temporary
barriers.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just line police
during
up.
Transit strike, you mean?
Actually, well, when Koch did it, he just decided he wanted to put a bike lane on, I forget what the road street was, but.
It was an emergent situation,
They
or?
put it in, no.
They have those orange and white things, they're like a plastic.
Boston barriers?
No, Boston, I always think of Boston barriers as concrete. These are like, they look like you could fill them with water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, do you call those Boston barriers as well?
They're
Okay.
Jersey barriers.
Jersey
Oh,
barriers.
Jersey barriers are the concrete, Boston barriers are the ones that look like,
To keep people from coming from New Jersey.
You're right.
So a response to Andrew is, it's not just a de Blasio thing. Cuomo said, if you see a packed train car, let it go and wait for the next train.
I know.
So it's coming from both sides.
It's just-
Just with regards,
Getting people on bikes can only help.
yeah, so I do think we should consider Ken's resolution. I have a response to read that can wait until after we talk about the resolution.
What do we?
It's sort of fascinating to see the response of the virus, and we haven't even experienced a death in New York City. We
Okay.
experienced last year 29 deaths in New York City by bike, and, you know, the city is working hard at putting in bike lanes, but we should really be elevating it to the level of a crisis.
Yeah.
Just by the way, someone did this, made a statement that if we have driverless cars, there will be no accidents if everyone follows the rules. The same thing is true with bicycles, the same
Well, if you have
thing is true-
driverless cars, people are just sitting there. What do you mean by following the rules?
Well,
Pedestrians.
the driverless
Oh,
car.
the pedestrians follow
And
the
the
rules.
bikes.
Right, or I know, the cars,
Yep.
but you have to follow the rules, and that's the problem.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand that, but anyone else have a comment? Okay. Yeah.
Non-board member but city bike rider,
Uh-huh.
that the handlebars include gas.
Oh, yeah.
That's determined.
But
the handlebars are not being.
Something I don't understand, this is point of information. You wear gloves, but you don't catch the virus through your hands, you catch the virus by touching your face. So if there are germs on your bare hands or on the gloves and you touch your face, what's the point of wearing the gloves?
Right.
Don't touch
Don't touch your face.
So is it like
When you
a
have the gloves
reminder?
on, yeah, you're just not.
It's a
I literally
reminder,
have to
okay.
do this.
Or if you have a cut on your finger, then there's a point.
Yeah.
You wear the gloves, and you take them off.
My comment on Ken's effort is that I would wanna know in what way what Ken is proposing is different than what I understood the city council to have already voted for, which is some aggressive number of additional miles
In 2
of
years.
bike lanes.
In 2 years. He's calling, for what I understand, he's calling for, potentially a temporary, but immediate, connection of all the bike lanes in the city so that there's a network that people could use next week. That's what he's calling for. Yeah.
I'm completely in favor of bikes, and the more protected lanes you have, the better and safer it becomes for all bike riders. But my issue with that, I personally have almost been wiped out at least half a dozen times. I mean, really almost wiped out. Once I fell right on the ground in order to avoid a bike rider, and you know, because they don't follow the rules, and they're often going the wrong way, especially at delivery people. So I don't know, it's a terrible problem. The more bikes you have and the more protected lanes you have, the more issues like that we're going to have.
Well, I was always of the belief.
Maybe something could be done in the pedestrian malls where there's a light or something to alert people to the fact that they are crossing into a bike lane, because sometimes people don't even realize that that's happening. And I guess people are beginning to get used to the fact that, okay, you're on this little island, you should be looking both ways, but often you just don't, so.
Well,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, it's true that in, cities that have a lot of cyclists, behavior is much better.
Much better,
And,
yes.
among cyclists, and so what happens is that you create a culture of civility because of the numbers.
That's right.
And
Denmark, Sweden.
that's our only hope, because we do this chicken and egg thing, refuse to put in safe infrastructure until cyclists behave themselves, we're gonna be at a standstill. But, evidence shows that when we get more cyclists on the street, particularly women, because right now, I think less than a third of cyclists in New York City are women. And, women tend to be better behaved, but, as cyclists, they're more cautious. Yeah, I'm not gonna go there. But, so that's really our only hope, is to build the infrastructure and hope that
I
we.
went to Scandinavia because I was particularly interested in seeing bike culture a few years ago, and it is incredible. But people ride, when the light changes, they all stop, and when the light turns to green, they all go, and they're not one abreast, and they're not in a protected lane, they're like 10 wide, and it's like an onslaught of bikes.
But they also have their own lanes, they have traffic
That's
signals
right.
that are timed for them.
That's right.
But it's not like they have to go 2 blocks and then wait for the cars to go.
We're not doing anything about that.
They also don't block subway doors, they step aside for people, they don't hold doors, we do things very differently.
You're right.
Barbara, ask Andy,
Richard.
to get a sign saying 25 miles
So,
by the George Washington Bridge.
I do think we should consider Ken's resolution, but to respond to Barbara, you mentioned delivery cyclists, and I've been saying for years we should have a meeting, ideally joint with BCI, talking about the issue of delivery cyclists. It's a really complicated issue where there's immigrants' rights issues. You've got a lot of people who, when they order their food, expect it to show up within 3 minutes and don't give a tip. So these delivery cyclists are trying to, make
that's a very good idea. It's a very good idea, because we can make requirements of people who do it, come to us for applications, and ask them to make sure that they're wearing the right kind of vest with displaying their restaurant, and a lot of people still don't. And,
well, and you also have Grubhub and Seamless. Their delivery riders aren't accountable to the restaurants. So it's a really complicated issue, and I think there's a lot of discussion we should be having.
I have an idea. Perhaps we can do a friendly amendment to ask the city to clean the city bike handlebars. Since we're requesting people to use bikes, people are gonna test out city bikes more often. I remember I tested it for a week straight, before I became a European membership. I would say that they can clean it often, or if that's, out of the question, maybe, I was gonna say putting plastic, but let's not do plastic. Wax paper that can go on the sleeve of the bars to help keep our riders safe. With a person on a post or popular post or something of that nature.
Here's another idea: when you swipe whatever you swipe to get your city bike, what if you were able to get one sheet of sanitizer?
I have at a helmet.
Andrew, can you pass that?
Or popular stations, maybe there's someone by, you go to your local train station.
Yeah.
But at least sometimes it's sanitation.
Yeah, there's so many things in the city that you touch. You touch the poles on the subway, the metal things hanging on to. People, it's incumbent on people to go.
We're particularly conscious right now.
I don't know that it's feasible.
I don't know how often they clean the city bikes.
I don't think it's feasible for someone else to clean city bikes. I think it's each rider should carry a rag or something.
Well, I know at night they come out with these big trucks and put bikes where they need to, so that might be an option.
Colleen?
Yeah.
I just want to thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Colleen.
Any other comments, questions? I'm trying to think of a way to put your friendly
Great.
amendment in a sort of more
Perfect.
general way. To
Thank
the
you.
City. Can you think of, without, specifically telling them to clean each
If
other?
we're gonna put in riches, it could be part of riches, that the city help
With rebalancing.
protecting the bikes.
Well, expanding the network and maintaining it in a healthy way or something, you can come up with some words. That's a good thought. questions, comments, criticisms, other ideas?
I'm just trying to get clarity. So I remember I was here for the transit strike, and a lot of parents let their kids stay home. My mom did not. So I walked all the way up to the High School of Music and Art by City College and went back. But there weren't as many bicycles as there are now. So
There weren't any
there,
bike shares then?
Oh, no, bike shares, no, but, so, I guess what I'm trying to say, sort of need responsive, you know, being that the mayor has called on, you know, trying to stay away from crowded subways, and I think biking is a great alternative, right? So what are we saying specifically that we want them to implement or widen existing bike lanes or create new ones during this crisis?
I would say,
Is that what we're saying?
sorry to cut you off. Temporary connections between existing bike networks so that people can get from place to place, so there's a continuous. Going through Midtown on a bike is a nightmare, and that's where people work.
Shouldn't work in
Steve?
The only point that I would make is that I would have no problem with that. What people don't know in this room is I bike, so I'm a biker. So I would just say that if you're going to, if this is a resolution to address the situation, I would just recommend it being somewhat broader, not just to addressing bikes. I would think that Albert made a suggestion. I'm not sure why it wouldn't be because of this. Here are some suggestions. I mean, what do I say? Sorry. But that would just be my suggestion. I'm not part of the committee, but well, if you're going to say bikes are brought up, so here's a suggestion. There were some suggestions around transit. I mean, I would just broaden the idea and not make it solely about
The
bikes.
problem with transit is nothing can be done. That's really long term. That's not something you can implement in a matter of 48 hours.
Yeah, because of the signal system, we can't add more carriages, which would be logical.
To add more trains.
Call the question?
What is the question?
It's for the city to immediately implement an emergency bike network of protected bike lanes connecting the existing ones. And I think we should adopt Rich's call for the city to help City Bike rebalance the.
Well, it's to make, I would say more broadly, to make bike share more accessible. Not just, what do you mean, no?
What does that mean?
To increase bikes, improve the
But we're talking
rebalancing.
short term within weeks.
You can increase the bikes in weeks.
I think we should specifically call
yeah.
that rebalancing, because that's something that can be done with existing.
Yeah, okay, we can.
Is it possible to somehow work enforcement into this, like, and also to do whatever they can to
I view that as, yes, I would say that, and in view of the increased usage, to make sure it's used in an orderly and responsible way, or something along those lines.
If we're talking enforcement, and you look at the statistics, the enforcement you'd want to save lives would be enforcing motor vehicles, which are killing pedestrians and cyclists by a huge amount more than cyclists are killing pedestrians. And so if we're looking at stepped up cycling and we want to save lives, statistically, you need to go after motor vehicles. But simple as that.
That can go hand in hand with the resolution.
Why exclude? Why would
They can go hand in hand with the resolution.
Safety is safety.
It's a zero-sum game. You have a limited number of.
Why does it negate it? Does it mean that all of a sudden, because that's more, you can't even have a conversation about bike safety? You're gonna pass something that's gonna be supportive of bikes, and it would seem that that would be a place to talk about bike safety. If you had something against cars, maybe you could address it, and I don't know why that would negate it simply because one is larger than the others. I would think they're both relative, right?
Well, I would want to put something in about stepped up enforcement against failure to yield on the part of drivers and speeding.
And everyone, you
things
put it all
like
in.
that.
But-
Because the unfortunate thing, the problem with putting something like this in our resolution is that we have, for instance, the 24th precinct has been issuing tickets to cyclists rolling through red lights recently, $190 tickets. And that's been their focus for the last several weeks, apparently. And so you put something like this in our resolution, and it just sort of gives them license to go out and continue doing things like that, which have nothing to do with safety. In fact, they're counterproductive, because they take patrol people off the streets and focus them on bikes when they should be focusing on motor vehicles. So,
I mean, I'm just a simple guy. You guys asked for a resolution to improve bikes and everyone's in favor. And Barbara simply says, can we also say to have safety, which seems like it's good. And now we're talking about police officers giving out too many tickets and that cars kill bikes. To me, I guess I'm not seeing it. We're all supportive of this resolution.
There's
And I
neither
don't know
on the
why, I'm just finishing, I never spoke. Everyone's good, it seems to be supportive, and I don't know why, if somebody says that this is important to them and it's about safety for everyone, why it would be negated. And you may be absolutely right that cars do more, but I don't know why that means all of a sudden that becomes irrelevant. And that may be true that tickets are being given, but I don't know why that becomes irrelevant because of that. It seems like we're making something more complex. She made a point that she felt it was safety. I agree with that. I'm one who bikes, and I have no problem with somebody telling me to be safe on a bike. And I don't know why this is a problem, unless there's a bigger issue or a bigger cause that's more important than the one that we're talking about.
The bigger issue is the implicit message it sends.
Okay, but then maybe you shouldn't vote on this, and maybe you should, you gotta put it, if it's a big issue, then maybe you shouldn't do it, because you gotta make sure the right people come, and blah, blah, blah.
Well,
Maybe
we could come up with, this is
it's turning into something more, I think,
Right.
there's this friendly.
The devil's
thing,
in the
it seemed like
details,
it
and I
was-
think something
I don't
along the lines
understand
of-
why you can't just say, let us all be safe, don't even say bikes,
That's
just say
essentially
everyone be.
direct
supposed to do.
enforcement so that the changes in the street are used in the safest way, something along those lines.
Everyone, bikers, cars, but everyone.
Because if we're talking about making changes to the street, I personally am in favor of them, reminding them that the changes should be made and enforced, in a way that promotes safety.
And look, and
Safety is
pedestrians are-
universal.
Half the time for me in a bike, pedestrians are the most dangerous. I've been knocked down like 5 times. I have no problem telling pedestrians to be careful. We should all be
You're right.
careful.
No, you're right, you're right.
Actually, there's, just as an aside, that article Ken referenced, less than 5% of all pedestrian deaths were due to the pedestrian's fault.
Well, that's good to know.
Well, I don't know if it's good or bad, then how do you protect yourself?
I mean, I'm just.
In where? In
New
New
York
York?
City, yeah.
Okay.
There's a great article in the Times.
Yeah. Okay, we'll definitely put something in about, directing enforcement so that the changes that are made are used in the safest possible way. Okay.
Can I just ask that
Absolutely.
before this turns up at full board, that you circulate
Okay.
the resolution with the wording so that we can all factor in on it? That'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, okay, wait a minute. We're talking about an emergency here, right? So this resolution, if we pass it, we're going into April with this, right? So, I mean, is that correct? Right?
have no
So-
choice.
So it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Things may change
Seems like
between now
rather than a
and then.
resolution, you wanna have a letter that goes to elected officials calling on this. We're waiting for a full board meeting. It's more.
We could do both.
Well,
You
Only
can't do a
things that
letter
for
on
current and
this
future
because
emergencies.
it's not, when you do a letter, you're basically asking for, an extension of or implementation of something you've already basically voted on.
Got it.
And this is enough of a departure from, I mean, that's, the closest I could get is what the city council has already voted for, but there's important nuance in what you're suggesting.
That's 2 years down the road.
I mean, keeping it, my theme is keeping it simple. My office is on the east side, and I thought long and hard about going in the subway or on a bus today because I am concerned about my own safety, right? And so the idea of having expansive bike lanes, whether even if they're temporary, during this time, I think is great if there is a need for it, and it would be great. I don't. It seems to me that you'd have to be kind of specific about it, and this is such a complex borough and city that I don't know how to implement this. Where do you open these up? And I mean, you know.
That's where we leave it to the experts. We do have an extensive network on the Upper West Side, but it's useless if it comes to an abrupt halt at 59th Street. So basically, it's calling on the city to figure out how you connect the corridors so more people, like our girlfriend, feel safer biking.
And then you're gonna be you will have to cut off certain portions of vehicular traffic. So you have to consider the MTA, and you have to consider the buses, you have to consider the trucks, there's so many, I mean, it's just such a complex.
I would think a traffic police would be the best and easiest thing. I mean, you see a cop just saying, you know, no and go. I mean, you're going to stop, rather than just having like
That's
a very
manpower and there's.
I'll just say one thing, in connection with this virus, it's not one of the most complicated things, so, in the whole
Okay.
scheme of response to the
Right.
virus. Rich?
I think we should just strip this down to a letter. I think a resolution's gonna take too long, and it's getting too convoluted. I think we want a letter, one, calling for increased rebalancing, even if the city needs to, add emergency funds, and actions to make sure that cyclists are kept safe.
I think the resolution could be useful because as Mark said, this is a new initiative. So I think
I don't think rebalancing is a new initiative.
No,
That's
We're not
balancing would not be,
So-
it's the
Yes, it's this.
emergency.
so fine. Let's just keep it. Yeah. So let's
Okay.
keep it at rebalancing.
And I think,
I'm not in favor of that.
I think the
Lisa?
rebalancing is really important, but I think cross-town connectors are super important, so, you know, you can get across.
And also,
Well,
to the
that's
extent
in the
they can
works already.
Deploy, it's in the works, but this is an emergency situation, and to the extent they can deploy more bikes, because where I live, there are no bikes.
Right.
None,
You also
zero.
gotta have offices, you also may have a lesser need because many offices are shutting down and people are not actually going to work. My office has now been, my office is closed now for 2 weeks.
Wow.
As of this afternoon.
I predict we're gonna be close too.
Oh, it's a board, yeah.
Just years ago, I proposed to the 24th precinct, we have a lot of volunteer, cops, where they do auxiliary police. And so I once said, why not put an auxiliary policeman on corners along, various streets? Because when a car sees someone dressed as a police officer, they're gonna slow down anyway. And they told me, well, we can't do that. And I said, well, why can't you do it? They said, because we can't be responsible if anything, if someone gets out and starts to beat up on the auxiliary police person. But again, this is a misuse of, we could use these kinds of things to our advantage if we can get the kinds of, ability.
Some cities have tried putting decoy police cars.
No,
on
these
streets.
are not decoys.
I know they're not, they're real human beings, I get it, yep.
Well, there's a big
Again,
difference.
I'm on the committee, but I actually agree with Rich. If you're looking to have the best impact, it would be 30 days before this would even come to board. Again,
But
this is your committee, I would be in favor of a letter that would have.
Oh, wait,
everything
there's
you
no
felt comfortable.
reason we can't do both, so.
So you wanna do a letter on rebalancing and a resolution on, an emergency network?
Yeah. And expanding the bike network to the extent
Simpler your
possible.
resolution, the more likely it is to pass.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The what?
The simpler the resolution's
That's pretty simple.
There's nobody that knows the need more than the end user and City Bike themselves. They know exactly right where their rebalancing is. I mean, aren't they already? I mean,
They rebalance
they
every night.
know what's happening because they're in the net. It's their network. So wouldn't they? Or aren't they already trying to rebalance as best they can? I mean, we're
And
talking
they're
about
failing.
financial aid.
Angel program, they
Yeah.
have, they have a program.
Are we talking about
for
financially
rebalancing.
backing them?
My point is that there's an emergency. We're telling more people to ride bikes on a daily basis. The system isn't able to handle that extra usage, as we've been seeing, because there are no bikes whatsoever on the Upper West Side.
Right.
And downtown, and City Bike even tweeted this out yesterday, we know that there are issues, that there are no docks to park the bikes.
Right.
So what's happening is people are riding all their bikes to work. They don't have the capacity to absorb the bikes downtown in the business districts. There are no bikes in the residential districts. They have a lot of effort, and a main thing that they do is rebalancing, but it's an economics issue of they need more people to be able to handle it on this emergency basis. And it makes sense if the city's calling on more people to ride, that the city could provide a minimal amount of funding to help them with this rebalancing on an emergency basis.
What would the money be spent on? I guess is what I'm.
Extra bodies to
the
serve as
balancers who
valets.
then take them to bring them back.
What they do, if there are no docks, is they have valets who just check in the bikes and watch them to make sure no one rides off with them.
Right.
And they also have people either riding the bikes up or loading them into trucks, taking them out.
City Bike have mobile docking stations, like a.
No.
They have trucks that bring the
They're not mutually exclusive. I think it's a
Right.
good
Be
idea.
interesting if they
to write
sent
them a
up
letter,
temporary
we'll put
docking
it in the
stations.
section. Any other questions, comments, criticisms, alternative ideas, anything? Okay, all those in favor of calling on, of Ken's resolution?
And this is separate from the letter.
Yeah, we'll do the letter as well, but we'll put something in there about rebalancing as well. Yep. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed?
Wait, you say
All
we're
those-
putting into the resolution about rebalancing, or
Yes.
we're doing a separate letter
Yes,
just about rebalancing?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Andrew, you're abstaining? Okay, committee members?
Can I just clarify, you are gonna put sort of the safety part in the general
Absolutely,
safety?
I wrote it down, yep. 2, that's it. Any other, new business? I have Andrew.
Hopefully something that's not quite so controversial, but it's an idea that
Whoa.
somebody brought up to me last week, Manhattan Henge, which is when the sun sets, twice a year, and people wander out in the streets. We're talking, and it may not happen, it may never happen, but we'd like to try and actually, instead of having people just stand in the streets and dodge cars, shut down something,
I'll call you back now.
one of the major streets, even one block.
I'll call you
You
now.
don't even have to do the
So
whole
they
street.
do that from 79th Street from Columbus to Amsterdam.
Yeah, of course
They
we
do
do.
that?
Yeah, we do.
The planetarium, the
Every
planetarium does
Cause I
that.
called the museum and they were
Every
like,
year.
they haven't gotten back to
No,
me
they
yet.
do it every year
And we
forever.
voted
But
to
where?
approve
Tell
that.
us where.
Oh,
79th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam.
Okay.
And they reroute the bus.
Okay.
Sure, why don't you
They're doing
explain
that.
on there?
Okay.
And they
I've done
posted
it for
on their
years.
website prior
I went on their
to,
website
Manhattan Henge,
and there was a
so-
lot of Manhattan stuff.
So they alternate, it happens in May and in July,
Right.
because we're not aligned with with True North.
Correct.
So they alternate years, sometimes they do it in May and sometimes they do it in July.
Right, no, they had information.
It's
but-
been cloudy the last 2 years.
And unfortunately, if you look west on 79th Street, there's a high rise
That's right.
in Gutenberg, New Jersey, that blocks your view of the sun, but, you know.
So maybe they should do it on 72nd.
The sun sets behind somebody's very expensive terrace.
So this is actually all in the business, but, we have a problem with, the Manhattan Day School. And I've been bringing this up for a number of years now. The Manhattan Day School has about 10 parking spots for their, staff. Most of their staff comes from Jersey or other locations. And they've got it from 7 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon.
Right, and they don't always, because the school ends before 5.
That's one thing,
Before.
but why shouldn't it just be from, let's say, from 7 AM to 9 AM, so that if they have people, their teachers coming into work, they have a place to
You
park?
missed the expert, Colleen, she left.
I asked her, she won't do it. And she won't do it, and there's no reason why.
Just like I can't overrule Gail Brewer, I cannot overrule the DOT.
But, yeah, but
That
let's
does
think
not
about,
come with this
why,
position.
I think the question here is why she can't do it. Because there's a lot of political pressure for her not to do it, and that's not a good way to operate. It's for sure not community oriented.
There are a lot of problems in government.
Yes, I
no
think
doubt
so.
about
You
that.
know, but we've asked the question, we've gotten an answer, we've asked actually several times.
It's a good question, in all fairness.
It's not a bad question, but we have an answer. The answer is unsatisfactory to some, and I appreciate that. But it isn't like our advisory role is going to contribute anything more to that dialogue.
I always assumed, this was my assumption, that they have after-school activities or something, there's some justification. I just assumed that.
No, I think it's simply a matter of, they have templates for signs and what.
That's it.
And.
That's what their printer prints.
Well, the principal of the day school and the principal of the yeshiva both said, okay, we'll put up a sign saying school's out. This would be on, a Friday afternoon.
And they're not going with that.
And the owner of the school said, no, we're not gonna do that. And he had reason for that.
Probably he parks his car there.
No, well, yeah, that's true. It's not like they're even good neighbors.
So let me just give since you weren't on the call, an update about
thanks.
M11.
Yeah.
Today there was a call between Erica Overton from Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal's office, several folks from Community Board 4, Mark, myself. There is a meeting this Thursday at bus headquarters at the MTA to discuss the ongoing problems with M11 throughput, how it gets bogged down in the area of the Lincoln Tunnel, which means it can't get to Abingdon Square on a timely basis and come back north, which is affecting 5 different community boards actually. So they're going to be talking about this on Thursday. I can't make that meeting, but are you going to be at that meeting? No, you can't make it. But Mark, are you going to that? Or?
I was going to defer to the chairs of the board, but if you can't make it, I will.
And we will keep you posted on progress on that. But I've also asked that that there be a moratorium on the so-called seasonal bus adjustments for the M11, in as much as we're trying to do something to improve the service. Every 6 months, they like to go on buses, survey them, look at the ridership. They do this several times, and then based on that ridership, they do these, usually it's a cut, but there are some additions to bus service. And so we're asking that the M11 be exempt from this. So we will see what happens, and that's...
Where's that plan? 2 Broadway? Or it's gonna be at 2 Broadway? What time?
2 o'clock.
Yeah. It's not a public meeting, no,
Yeah.
Bruce.
Oh, it's not public?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all.
Any other new business? Well, I hope this is.
No, I mean, the 800-pound gorilla here is obviously we've got coronavirus, and we talked about, well, I mean, going on in the world, and I guess this is more of a question, and I don't mean to usurp your authority as co-chair, but are there any other ideas regarding transportation pertaining to this health crisis that we have right now? I mean, we passed a resolution, but anything else regarding MTA, anything? I mean, by the way, it occurred to me that not only are more people biking, to some people's chagrin, you will see more people driving cars into the city because they want to avoid public transportation. And I know, so there's, what's that?
And then avoiding a cab and ride shares.
And so is there anything else, just as for this particular committee, that we want to think about, suggest?
What virus is this?
Or, take 2 bicycles and call me in the morning.
I think we're in better shape than most places where people, well, because
you
people
can
could
walk, and a lot of people
Yeah.
do. I've been walking almost every day.
I just think it seems to me, and Mark, we spoke briefly, that
okay.
The board.
Great job. Thanks, everyone. I hope we get to keep meeting in person.
The board as a whole and each committee is going to need to think about.
There are people saying.
I'm surprised Gail hasn't said